Good op-ed in the Wall Street Journal from Philip Demuth. He's the author of The Overtaxed Investor. The Biden tax hike would be severe. We had this curious conversation last week with our friend Jimmy Pethokoukis from the American Enterprise Institute, where James, who is clearly
what's going on with him?
clearly he is trending to, if not in the Never Trumper camp, sort of middling the question as to whether or not Trump or Biden would be better for economic growth and prosperity. Well, there are things on economic policy with which I disagree with President Trump, as I've noted on this show many times. But, this is not a close call between Biden and Trump. I don't know what Pethokoukis is talking about. Yes, H-1B visas, we can talk about that. We can talk about trade policy. But,
But he even had the facts wrong on COVID cases in Sweden. Like, he was out of...
Well, just focusing on
just
economics.
Okay.
We're just focusing on the most idiotic tax of all, a tax on work. You want more work, right? Yet we tax work, and Biden wants to tax it significantly more than Trump did. For example, again, Demuth. To see what a good deal we have now, let's look at the numbers. A married couple filing jointly that shows $78,000 of ordinary income. Their current marginal rate is 12%. When the Trump tax cuts expire, their marginal rate will more than double to 25%. Is that significant? If you are able to accrue some wealth over the life of your working career, Joe Biden has, per the apparatchiks that are his policymakers around him, he has all kinds of tax increases that are wild and willy and woefully destructive. The top line here is the tax foundation concludes the Biden tax plan would reduce the size of the economy by 1.5%, lead to 585,000 fewer full-time equivalent jobs, while lowering overall after-tax income for all income quintiles. As Demuth writes, this isn't a debate between growing the pie versus redistributing the pie. It's about everyone settling for a smaller piece of pie. Everyone. And so I don't understand where some of our free market friends are coming from. You can dislike Trump's personality, but to compare the approach on tax policy and even on spend policy, as bad as Trump is, and Republicans have been on fiscal policy when it comes to spending, again, it pales in comparison to the Green New Deal crowd, as we were just discussing with Bjorn Lomborg. So it's just baffling to me. On the merits, this is not a close call. For more on this, we're pleased to be joined by Steve Moore, economist, Wall Street Journal columnist, author of Trumponomics. Steve, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Hi, guys. Good morning.
Good morning. Maybe it is time that we start to get into some of the details, and the Trump team does as well, to remind people exactly what the choices are. We've talked a lot about the choices between civilization and the lack of civilization, between law and order and lawlessness. How about between growth and prosperity versus government-centric enforced misery across the board?
So I actually have read through the entire Biden plan. There's about 150 pages, and I seriously, I'm not making this stuff up, Dan. And maybe one of your listeners could call in and tell me if I'm wrong about this. I can't find one good idea on the economy, not one, especially when it comes to taxes and energy. And we're talking about, just so people know what the background of what you guys are talking about. So the income, the corporate tax rate would go from 21 to 28%. So that's about a 25%, 30% increase in the corporate rate. Then on top of that, they raise the by the way, how is that going to create jobs again? By increasing the tax rate on American corporations, how does that create jobs? Then the second thing is that the capital gains tax, which, by the way, anybody out there who owns stock, if you have a pension fund, if you have a 401k plan, if you have a union plan, where do you think those trillions of dollars is invested? It's invested in the stock market. He raises the capital gains rate from 23.8 to almost 40%.
39.6, like the top bracket, right?
Yeah, and wait, I'm not done. People are ignoring this, but one of his most devious and sinister ideas is to get rid of something that has been a hallmark of the federal tax code for about 100 years, which is something called the step-up basis at death on capital gains. That means, Dan, when you die with your millions and millions of dollars,
Yes.
if you want to pass that to your kids under the current law, you've
My
got a
kids.
rule that you don't have to pay a capital gains tax on it. Now you would have to. If you add up just those three taxes, you're talking about the biggest increase in taxes on investment income in the history of the United States. That's going to tank the stock market. In fact, I look at the stock market every day. I'm like, what the hell are these investors doing? There's a 50% chance Joe Biden might be the next president, and if he's elected, he's going to do this stuff. So it is very negative for growth. And by the way, the energy stuff is even worse. $2 trillion of government investment, quote, investment in green energy. We're gonna waste $2 trillion, and we're gonna shut down our oil and gas industry, which will destroy the economies of Ohio and Pennsylvania and West Virginia and Oklahoma and Texas and North Dakota and New Mexico. I mean, it's ludicrous. It's crazy. This is why I think, despite all of Donald Trump's problems, I think he's still going to win this election, because at the end of the day, people are going to go into that voting booth, and they may not like Donald Trump. The polls show pretty clearly over half of Americans do not like Donald Trump, but they're going to say, gee, am I really willing to invest, put at risk my lifetime of saving and investment and my job so I can put Joe Biden in the White House? We'll see.
Now that everything's closing again in California, Arizona, do you think the unemployment number is going to creep back up again?
Well,
and what can those businesses do? Do they need another relief, another PPP loan?
no, so that's a great question, Amy. First of all, I do see continued progress, but it's going to be gradual on the economy. And look, California did some shutdowns, and Arizona's done some, but Texas is not. Florida's not. And by the way, if you look at the data, it's starting the increase in cases is starting to level off in Florida and Arizona and Texas, and it's going to follow the same path it did in the Northeast, where it's going to decline. And I actually think by the end of the summer, we're going to see vast reductions in caseloads. But that being said, the most important thing right now, the most important thing for the economy, is right now as we speak, the president is negotiating with Nancy Pelosi and the Democrats to get a Phase 4 package. If they extend these unemployment benefits, that right now 4 out of 5 workers in America, 4 out of 5 workers who lost their jobs are getting paid more money to stay home and sit on their couch and watch TV than go back on the job. And by the way, the Pelosi bill that passed the House would extend that for another 6 months. If you do that, Donald Trump will not be re-elected president. He will not be re-elected because we will not have a recovery. You'll have millions of open jobs, but people won't go into the jobs. Every single day, Dan and Amy, I call from a small business, men and women who own factories or own construction companies or own stores or own restaurants. They can't get workers back on the job because they're being paid more to stay on the couch.
Yeah, that's a problem. That's an important statement you make too. You don't believe he can be reelected if you extend those premium unemployment benefits, the added $2,400 a month. And
because it'll.
because
Let me just.
yeah, go ahead.
Let me just
Go
finish
ahead.
that point. You know Casey Mulligan at University of Chicago. He did a study for us at Made to Unleash Prosperity, and he estimates that if they were to extend those unemployment benefits. By the way, why would anybody go to work? Why would any sane person go to work if they got paid more for not going back to work? He estimates you will have 10 million fewer jobs by the end of the year. No, there will be no recovery if we do that Pelosi plan. And by the way, it's very suspicious, isn't it, that the Pelosi plan goes through January. Gee, I wonder why she did that right through the election, because these people are not that stupid. They understand if they want to win the election, the best way to do it is to torpedo the economy. And if you wanted to torpedo the economy, I'm not saying she does, but if she wanted to torpedo the economy, there's very few better ways to do it than to pay people more not for working than for working.
So where do things stand with respect to the White House and Senate Republicans on yet another stimulus that has been much bandied about over the last couple of weeks, but we haven't seen it take form yet?
Well, there was a great question. There was good news from Larry Kudlow. He was on Fox yesterday, and he said point blank President Trump will not sign another bill unless it has a payroll tax cut. So, and as you know, I've been a big fan of that. Larry Kudlow is a big fan of it. Steve Forbes is a big fan of it. Art Laffer is a big fan of that. That actually pays people to work. In other words, we're doing everything upside down. I know people are going to be, surprised by this, that Washington's doing everything upside down. Right now, we're paying people not to work. If you cut the payroll tax, you actually give up people a bonus for working. And of course, my liberal friends say, but gee, that doesn't help people who don't have a job. The best way to help people get who don't have a job is get them a job, and the payroll tax cut would do that.
Life is so simple if you just follow sort of the economics 101 playbook, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is. And, and the other thing is, what's the first rule of economics that I learned from Arthur Laffer? If you tax something, you get less of it, right? Mm-hmm. So let me get this straight. We're going to tax American small businesses. We're going to tax American corporations. We're going to tax American investment by almost 50% more. And somehow, we're going to get more jobs. I mean, Dan, it's does that make any sense? What he calls this the Made in America tax plan. What's going to be made in America? You're going to brought $1 trillion into the United States, cut taxes under Trump. Now we're going to that. The money's going to leave.
And I mean, I'm just as a point of order here. I learned the first rule of economics from Thomas Sowell. The first rule of economics is scarcity. There's always more demand than there is supply of something, and then the corollary to that is the politicians always promising more of that good that that actually exists as well. So that's the real challenge that you have that runs into Art Laffer's you tax something, you get less of it. Iron law, that is, I should say.
But by the way, Dan, there's one other iron law, because since we're teaching economics this morning, I think all economics comes down to Milton Friedman's famous phrase that there ain't no such thing as a free lunch. All we've been doing for the last 4 months is dishing out free lunches to people. If you're a company on distress, you get money. If you lost your job, we're going to give you money. And at some point, somebody has to pay for this, folks. And some of my liberal friends say, well, yeah, we're going to just have all the rich people pay for this. Folks, there aren't enough rich people. There aren't enough Bill Gates and Warren Buffett to pay for $5 trillion of spending. You can take every penny that these guys got. You're not going to be able to pay for this.
Well, and the other issue, though, too, just in terms of if you were to provide that premium unemployment benefit level of the $600 plus per week, the additional $600. The other problem, the New York Times piece this week, surprisingly, I think they were cheerleading this occurrence, but it was still telling, profiling a bunch of small business owners, basically saying, I can't keep doing this, which is to say the opening and closing, opening and closing. Yep. And I think it's hard to estimate what kind of impact that's going to have. But, when you're talking about a quarter, maybe a third of restaurants in big cities that aren't going to make it, boy, those numbers start to go up real quick if you're open for 2 weeks, closed for 3 weeks, open for 2 weeks, closed for 3 weeks, which some of these states seem to be pursuing.
My hat goes off to the small businessmen and women who are the backbone of the economy, who somehow are commandeering through this madness. But you're right. You that's what you're seeing in states like California right now and Arizona. Well, okay, you can go. And then the rules make absolutely no sense in terms of what you can open and what you can't open. But since we're on the economy, I want to add one other thing. You cannot have a functioning economy, Dan and Amy, you cannot have a functioning economy this fall if the schools are shut down. You have to get the schools open, and school children do not get coronavirus. Let me say it again. School children do not get coronavirus. So the idea that somehow we're keeping that your kid is more likely to be hit by crossing the street than getting coronavirus and dying. So why in the world? I don't know what the rules are in Illinois, but where I live in suburban Maryland, they're saying 2 days a week of school. Kids are going to lose a whole year of schooling. That does severe damage to their lifetime earnings.
Mm-hmm. As someone mentioned earlier in the program, it's just a big social experiment that we're putting our children into. How long they can last
Amy,
without being in school.
And you're exactly right, Amy. And you know what social experiment we've learned? that this distance learning, it works for smart kids. They know how to get on the computer. Their parents have all the, guidance and stuff. I have a good friend who teaches education and school in Los Angeles. I said, how'd the distance learning go? She said, 20% of the kids did the work and were very diligent. She said about a third of the kids cheated on the tests. She said the other 50%, we don't even know what happened to those kids. This is a real national tragedy if we don't start. And by the way, if the teachers don't want to teach, and we're seeing that in Los Angeles County, 30,000 teachers saying we're not teaching unless we have Medicare for all and taxes on the rich and Green New Deal. If they don't want to teach, let's start giving every school child in America and family a voucher so they can go to a school that is open
Amen,
up.
brother.
He is Steve Moore, economist, Wall Street Journal columnist, author of Trumponomics. Steve, thanks for joining us.
Hey, guys, have a great week. Take care.
You too. And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.